Hello, everyone that has joined us so far. Thank you for coming. We will be starting just in a few minutes, just to allow a little bit more time for others to join. So just hang tight, and we will be starting shortly. Thank you. For those that just joined, we will be starting just in a few minutes to allow a little bit more time for others to join. So hang tight. We'll get going soon.
Nothing. Let's wait 10 more minutes. I think. Okay, सब लोग सुन सकते
Sure, no problem. We can start. We'll start at 7:50 IST time. No issue. All right, so yeah, we will begin, and wanted to thank those that are here for attending. Appreciate your time, and we are excited to share some great stuff about the admissions process and ways to fund your study abroad. And so my name is Nathan Treadwell, and I am with Nomad Credit. I'm the head of U.S. admissions at Nomad Credit. We also have Manoj Shetty, the product and sales head at Auxilo, and Mr. Clifton Narcissus as well, who's the Auxilo student ambassador. Just wanted to allow them to just quickly introduce themselves, and they will be speaking to you at length later on in the presentation.
Hi guys. This is Manoj Shetty. I work with Auxilo Finserve. I take care of product and sales for Auxilo. I'm looking forward to have a chat with you and explain in terms of the financial bit of how to go about take a loan and all that. So later during the session, I'll explain you the entire process.
Hello everyone, my name's Clifton. I am the student ambassador for Auxilo, and I'm here to give you all a more realistic view of what's studying in Canada, or uh, your whole path to moving from A country to B country, and what exactly can you expect through this journey.
Great. Well, yeah, thank you guys for the quick words there. We will hear a lot of great stuff from you just in a moment. So before I dive into some of the admissions-based topics that I'll be talking about, I just wanted to say a little bit about Nomad Credit. So we are a company of a founding team of recent U.S. graduates. Two of our co-founders, including myself, graduated from Indiana University. And we've been driven by a passion to really lower the barriers to U.S. higher education for international students. Brian, our CEO, has been involved in the student loan industry for several years now, particularly international students. And we've also seen a huge demand for a good service for admissions into both the US and other countries. So we have lived, worked, and studied in the US, so we are experts on the culture of the US in terms of the economy, as well as how the universities work and are tied into the visa process, admission process, and getting a job after school. This year alone, we'll have helped thousands of Indian students evaluate their options. And so we are looking forward to continuing that pace and helping you as well if you decide that you do need admission help. So for today, we will talk about why you might study abroad, reasons for doing so. We'll also dive a bit into entrance exam guidelines, as well as tips and things to be aware of, especially depending on if you're going to study in the US or Canada. And we'll also dive into a little bit of university admission guidelines. I'd also like to point out that at any time during the webinar, if you do have a question, there is a questions tab in the webinar application. So you can go there and type a question. We'll be able to see that question come in, and we'll have 3 separate Q&A sessions for this webinar, one after I speak my piece on admissions, one after Auxilo speaks their piece, and then we'll have a final question and answer session at the end. So if you do have a question, please feel free to enter it in there and we will see it. So why might you study abroad? That's a good question, and over 5 million students in the world have answered that question affirmatively. And over 600,000 Indian students will be studying abroad. And many of those students going to the US, which has actually over 1.1 million international students currently studying there. So At a very general level, it's just an important time in your life determining how you want to set up your future for your career and potential earnings, and study abroad can be a great opportunity to change the course of your life and to give you that opportunity for potential future earnings. So why do many Indian students want to study abroad? So many will find more opportunity, a sense of adventure, make a new life, but more practical is that you can gain some great skills that you might not have otherwise at a prestigious university in the US and Canada, Australia, Europe. You can have the opportunity to stay abroad in those countries, as well as if you decide to come back to India, you'll have those new skills and can inject those new ideas into Indian businesses and organizations. Particularly in US, Canada, Europe, and Australia, they have strong economies, and strong economies are important because it leads to job opportunities as well as a demand for talent. So the top schools in these countries will teach great skills as well as offer prestige that you have a degree from that university and opportunities for networking within the alumni base of that university. And companies that recruit directly from the universities can provide great career opportunities. So as I mentioned, US, Canada, Australia, and Europe are top destinations. They all have prestigious universities and strong economies with lots of job opportunities. And particularly in the US is the world's largest economy at roughly $20.4 trillion and is continuing to grow. Even over last year, it grew by $1 trillion. And as I mentioned, this strong economy is very important for two things: jobs and potential salary after graduation. And the US is actually seeing the lowest unemployment rate in 10 years, and the average graduate salary is the highest it's been in the last decade. So this bodes well for students who graduate from US universities. So one of the things we see that many students ask is, what is the most important for studying? If you want to just switch the slide, Matt, thanks. Country or course or university? So ultimately, there's a simple answer to this question, often a difficult answer, but ultimately it is the student that is the most important. Learning the skills you need, networking to find the opportunities that will advance your career will be the most important in terms of your future success. A student with drive and talent can be successful anywhere they go. With that said, at a macro level, a university can be important for prestige. The level of instruction that you might receive from professors and research opportunities at that university may impact your ability to supplement your own natural talent and hard work. Different universities can offer different network opportunities, both within the alumni base of that university, the prestige of having a degree there, and different companies that might recruit directly from that university, as well as industry that's nearby. So that is something to consider, that the region your university is, even within the country level, can be very important. For instance, in the Northwest United States, in cities such as Seattle, Portland, and San Francisco, very tech-heavy industry. So many students that are interested in going into tech or engineering may end up there because they'll know there are a lot of opportunities for companies in those areas. So as I mentioned, tech can be important, so that's where course can come in importance in terms of what you're studying. This will be more dependent on the country and region you're going to. So you would want to make sure that you are studying something that has demand in that country or region. So for instance, if you're going to the US, there is a STEM shortage in the US right now, and STEM stands for science, tech, engineering, or mathematics. So those that have a degree in STEM will have a high demand. So that's something to look for, is what is in high demand at the country or region that you're going to. There also might be some further benefits in terms of visa. For example, the OPT program stands for Optional Practical Training. In the US, if you are doing a STEM major, it can be for 3 years. You can actually work for 3 years after you graduate before you need to get an actual work visa, the H-1B. So university, course, and country all are important, all have different factors that can lead to your success. Ultimately, it will depend on you, and as well as the fit for what you are looking for. So just make sure that the university, country, or course you are studying fits what you would like to do. So we do get a question of, should I study abroad or should I study in India? Again, this is a preference thing and will depend on each student, and there is no actual right answer. But those that are looking for a new life or new adventure in another country, then obviously it would be beneficial to go study abroad. Many might want to move and stay in that country after they have finished their degree, and having a degree from that actual country. For instance, if you have a degree from the US, that's just one additional step forward to staying there long term. Universities abroad can be very renowned for their prowess in educational training, as well as the prestige that comes with a degree from those universities. So you may have more opportunities to study at universities of that caliber, as well as opportunities for higher paying jobs once you graduate, as many companies in those countries will hire international students that attend school in those countries. However, there is a con. The cost is much higher in terms of tuition and cost of attendance. There could also be personal cost of moving away from family and friends and what you do know. Versus studying in India. Pros of this is, there is familiarity. It is the country that you grew up in and are aware of the culture. There can be lower cost for studying in India. And there are also renowned universities in India itself and job opportunities after school. So really it does depend on fit of student and what you are looking for. So that is just a quick overview of studying abroad. So I did want to just open the floor up for any questions that you may have, and I do see one. So how to manage studying on own in a very new or unknown country? I think this question actually will probably be best answered by Clifton. So I'm going to table this question if that's okay, and we'll add it to a later question and answer session when Clifton has finished his presentation. Great question though, by the way. Any other questions for study abroad right now? All right, looks like we're good. If you do have one for study abroad, we still can answer later if you think of one as we go. So the next topic is, what are universities looking for, particularly entrance exam guidelines. So to help answer this question, I just want to give a brief overview of what universities are looking for and the three major aspects of a profile, of a student's profile, that are more important than any other, particularly in the US, is your language test, whether it's TOEFL or IELTS, your standardized exam, typically a GRE or GMAT exam if you're a master's student, and your CGPA or percentage. So universities do take a holistic approach. They will consider other aspects such as your statement of purpose, the experience you've had working, the research papers, as well as your course details of your undergraduate experience. However, it will likely not impact as much as a language score, a GRE score, or your percentage. And the reason for this is universities do have hard requirements to help them vet the students that are applying. And it can be hard to evaluate the qualitative international student accolades, so they will often default to standardized exams or qualities. For instance, a university can say if a student scored a 310 on their GRE, they have a decent idea of what that means. Unfortunately, they don't have the familiarity with all of India or all of the companies in India, and this would apply even for a US student that was applying to a US university. What does 2 years experience at a company mean? That's a bit more harder to vet, what the student might have learned. So universities will default often to hard requirements of test scores. So this means that exams can be very, very important, especially in the US for the GRE. Our experience is that this is the #1 thing that a university might look at when evaluating students. So many students we have come across don't quite take this as seriously as they might. And many schools will just automatically deny a student if they don't have a GRE or if the GRE is below their minimum. The caveat being is other countries, the GRE might not be as important. For instance, Canada, not all the universities do require a GRE or GMAT. They will look at your test scores and GPA, as well as all other factors that you might have. And a quick note on the language test, very important to take your language test seriously and score well. In the US and Canada, either the IELTS or TOEFL is typically accepted. It's often a hard requirement though, and so for instance, the IELTS will likely require a 6.5 overall or better to get into a school that you might like to go to. There are a couple other language tests out there. For instance, the PTE exam. So some students might take this as an alternative after they have taken the IELTS or TOEFL if they're trying to increase their score, but it is limited to certain schools that will accept. So not every school will accept the PTE exam. So that's certainly something to check into if you are planning to take a PTE, is to check what schools actually will accept it. So often students will ask us, how should I prep for the GRE? Do you have any hacks or tips to do so? And the answer is we do. It's actually very simple, which is good news. The bad news is that while it is simple, it does just take time. And the answer is you need to prepare. You should take practice exams. You should find course materials to study. There are several companies out there. You can also use resources for other students that have studied for the exam. It's actually quite a community that, Indian students helping each other to do well on the exam. So no easy answer, but a simple answer. You just have to put in some time to study. And I just want to lastly reiterate, it is very important to do well, especially if you're going to the US on the GRE exam. And that could be the difference between getting into the school you'd like to go to and one you would not. So you've written your exams, you've gotten your scores, or at least you've maybe taken several practice exams and have a good idea of what you might get. So I covered what the requirements might be for a university, but for a specific university, what might that be? So many universities do have this information publicly available. You can go to their university website or the specific program website and look this up. However, an equal number of universities might not have it available. And so that's one of the reasons for working with an admissions counselor, as they might have insights that are not quite publicly available. And that's actually something that Nomad does, is that we do understand these requirements and can help choose safe, ambitious, or moderate school choices. And one of the things to really consider is how your university choice affects your future job prospects. And just because you can get into a higher ranked school doesn't necessarily mean that you should go there. And it's always important to pick a safe school or two just to have that admittance in hand. This can be a good backup plan, and it can help with the visa process by having more than one admit. So speaking more specifically to the US, but also I think this applies to other countries as well, such as Canada. Outside of the top 10 or 20 schools, the ranking doesn't really matter so much. And the reason for this is most employers won't travel far to hire due to expense. So they'll hire at universities that are located in their region, in their cities, to save time and money. And it's important to remember the US is huge geographically, as well as Canada, Europe, and Australia. It's bigger than India geographically. So it's important to know the local economies, the local industries, and who is hiring from schools in the area. So for example, Arizona State, this is a fairly popular school and nothing wrong with attending this school, but there's not much around. It's really just Phoenix and desert. So while Phoenix is a city, it's a smaller city, so your job opportunities might be a little bit limited. Versus, say, Washington State University, might be slightly lowerly ranked than Arizona State. However, Amazon and Microsoft, two major companies of the world, have their headquarters in Seattle, which is very close to Washington State. As another example, I myself and our CEO, Brian, went to Indiana University, and this is located very close to Chicago, which is the third largest city in the US. And we are both, Nomad is based in Chicago, so we have both ended up in Chicago, and were hired to start our careers by companies that were based in Chicago. And another thing to remember about rankings is that they are actually affected by the amount of international students who apply and enroll. So rankings can be inflated. So for example, a school like UT Arlington, their ranking is inflated due to how many international students are enrolled and less factored by job placement and academics. And one more thing to note is that rankings like the US News don't really factor in things like the ability for an international student to get a visa after school, as well as job opportunities. So to recap, very important to pick schools that have great job opportunities in the area. Research different schools in the regions and what the industry is for those regions. And as I mentioned, Pacific Northwest is a hotbed for tech jobs, and that would be an example. And there are major cities though throughout the US, so likely wherever you do end up, there will be opportunity for a job. Just quickly go through the application process for applying to the school. So it is very important to start early to identify the schools that you'd like to apply to. There are many steps that include filling out a lot of forms, collecting a lot of different documents related to your academics, as well as writing an SOP, finding your recommenders. So this all takes time. And many students wait late because they see that the deadline might not be for another 3 months. But by the time they collect everything, the deadline's a month away. And in the meantime, while you were taking your time collecting things, other students were applying and receiving their admittances. So while a deadline might be a deadline to actually get your application in, most schools have a quota of students that they can accept for the term. and they are accepting students as they come in that show quality. So if you do wait, you may find yourself missed out because the school has already accepted students, even if perhaps your profile is as good or better. So it is important to get your application in as early as you can. So many students will do this process on their own, but however, many will also use experts, which can be useful as they have done thousands of applications and can know all the ins and outs that might occur. No university application is exactly the same, so many students do determine that they will need help to navigate the process. And it's really important to not fill anything out incorrectly. Certain mistakes can't be fixed and could cause an automatic denial. So that's one thing that Nomad does, is that we do help students through their applications. We assist and take care of the details so that no mistakes will occur. And just as a note, we've had many students tell us that they've never imagined this application process being so easy by working through us. So if you were to work through us, you would send us all of your documents. We would help through the application process, keep tabs with the school, and then unfortunately there is just a waiting period. So that is outside of the student's control as well as Nomad control. And different universities will take different amount of times to get their admissions decisions out. So that's another reason to apply early, so you can have peace of mind and get that decision sooner. So I just wanted to open the floor up again to any questions about exam guidelines, entrance requirements, the application process. Okay, looks like we are set there. If you do have questions, let us know. But right now I wanted to give the presentation to the man of the hour, Manoj, and he will go forward and explain some education finance guidelines.
Thanks, Nathan. I mean, that presentation was very, very informative. I mean, wonderful, man. So guys, let me just quickly introduce you about Auxilo, and then I would basically detail it out further. Auxilo is an NBFC which is registered with Reserve Bank of India. Our primary focus is to basically lend to students, and we, apart from lending to students, we also basically fund education infrastructure. That is, we give working capital loans to schools and all that. So we basically take care of the complete ecosystem of the education. The company basically was founded around 3 years back, and it's headed by our CEO, Mr. Neeraj Saxena. Moving on to the next slide. Okay. So when we look at education loan altogether, I mean, when you look at those aspects, some of the key factors which becomes very important for a student, anybody who's applying, the credit history is something which becomes very critical for a student. So it's very important that when you basically apply for a loan, kindly look into your credit score, because that's where it determines what rate of interest you will end up getting, or what kind of, whether you'll get a secured loan or an unsecured loan, even for that matter, what amount of loan you can apply for. Basically, is determined by the credit history altogether. So it's so when you're taking an education loan, this is apart from other aspect. I feel when the student should basically be very mindful of his credit history altogether. Now moving on to the next slide. The reason why you need to choose Auxilo, I mean, there are multiple reasons why you should go for. I mean, what we have done is we basically, the philosophy of Auxilo per se is to basically take care of student needs. At Auxilo, we understand that, that every student is different. We need to customize loans So our motto always is to basically how to structure the loan and ensure that the student basically end up getting a loan. So for that we have our in-house algorithms and all that. And plus apart from that, apart from all this, we also ensure that the entire process is extremely seamless. So the student can basically get into availing a loan through various means. That is, he can directly contact our executives. He can go through online, and that's why the primary focus is to basically make the process extremely seamless and also ensure that that end of it, student gets what he's looking out for. Moving on to the next slide. So basically, when you look at the product features, I mean, we take care of the complete life cycle of the loan. I mean, if a student is looking for a loan during his I-20, or he basically requires a proof of fund, so we basically take care of the entire thing. In terms of when you look at the product side of it, we basically take care of his course fees. We also take care of his living expenses, books and periodicals. We take care of the entire gamut there. In the next slide, I will basically cover in terms of the product features and all that stuff. So moving on to the next slide. I think next time we should. So the countries, when we talk about the countries, what we cover all the countries. We talk about whether you talk about US, Canada, Ireland, Australia, New Zealand. We cover all the countries. In fact, all these countries we have already funded in terms of that. So I mean, when we look at this education per se, I mean, I have myself taken a loan when I had basically gone for my further studies, higher studies. One of the biggest thing what a student basically runs through, or the biggest dilemma is in terms of whether he'll basically get a loan per se, which is unsecured. I mean, it becomes very difficult when a student basically has to give a security which his parents have to mortgage. So at Auxilo, we understand the stress what student has to go through. So our primary motto is to understand the needs of the student. If at all, if the student is getting into a school which is basically of good repute, we do not mind going up and giving a loan which is completely unsecured. Our rate of interest is also determined in terms of how is this credit history and all that. So even our rates are extremely competitive. One of the things which when you talk about education loan, which I really get excited is the repayment pattern altogether. So the student, when he takes a loan, he gets multiple options of repaying it back. So the first option is the traditional one. What we talk about is the monthly equated installments, where you pay the monthly installment from day one. The second option is, where the student only serves the simple interest. That is, only the interest part of it is basically serviced by the student or his parents. And the third option is the partial interest, which again is basically to enable the student not to be dependent on his parents. So what we do out here is only a small bit of amount, say around 5,000 rupees per month. So if a student walks away with a 50 lakh rupees loan, we are talking about paying as little as 5,000 rupees, 5,000 rupees as towards a monthly repayment. So it becomes a scenario where someone going maybe to a US, it is a scenario where the student takes a loan of around 50 lakh rupees. It is unsecured, so he doesn't have to give any collateral. And third is as low as monthly payment of around 5,000 rupees. So that's the three combination he walks away with. And to add to that, the thing what we cover out here is we cover the cost of education. We take care of his books and periodicals expenses. We take care of any other expenses apart from stay expenses and everything. We take care of all those expenses out here. So what Auxilo offers out here is it covers all the countries which you can think of. I mean, majorly, and we take care of all the expenses what the student has to go through, and further to that, the rate of interest is extremely competitive. So these are the solutions we basically we provide to the students. Now, the options how basically they can connect to Auxilo is connect to us basically is through our portal. You can directly log on to our portal, and it will take you through the journey. I mean, journey of taking the loan. The other one is we have also introduced a smart bot, loan bot, which basically will help you seamlessly uh, seamlessly park into us. So this will take you to the journey of availing the loan with us. So I'm in next slide. And obviously, I mean, nevertheless, you can always go through a traditional mean of calling us. So that's how you can connect to us. Okay, there are some questions which has come to me. So I'll just take some of them. I don't think so. In the interest of time, I'll be able to take all of that. But some of them looks very interesting. So I'll just take few of them. So there's Ambrish Sakolkar who says that I don't have any security. Okay, in this case, Amrish, I mean, what you can do out here is not a problem. I mean, what you'll need to tell me is, which country you're getting into. There are a couple of things which I just spoke about. I mean, generally we look into, which country you're getting into, what college you're enrolling yourself into, and if that thing works, I mean, I don't think so. You need a security out there. So I would suggest that I mean, you can connect through us through a chatbot, or basically through call us on our toll free number. The second question which comes to me is from Nikhil, who says that how to avail loan just on property collateral. Okay, that is what I assume is you're saying that suppose if a student is basically I'm just assuming, Nikhil, it's just in case that you don't have a good score or something of that sort. Yeah, you can basically avail the loan purely on property collateral. In that case, what we do out here is, in case you're getting into a college which you feel, or if the college is not that great, what we can do out here is we can completely look into your father's income. We can consider only your father's income, and in this case, the product will be completely EMI based. So I hope I have answered that. In case there's a query, you can always write to us. The other question is from Arabind Krishnan, who says, do you provide 100% loan? Yeah, of course we do that. We cover all the expenses, which covers from cost of education to your books, books and periodical expenses, your stay and everything, hostel fees, everything. We cover all of them. There is Vasavi who says that will you provide loans to study in India? Of course, we do that. We basically give you loans to study in India. We do that. There is this question which says that do we need collateral for Canada, and how much loan we can apply? So this question basically comes from Gurbinder Singh. Yeah, I mean, see, I mean, as I said, I mean, it's a very broad question when you say that, do we need collateral for Canada and how much loan we can apply? So it depends upon, which university you're getting into, what course you're getting into. So there are multiple variables which runs into, So not necessarily all colleges or all universities in Canada we ask for collateral. And to answer your question, we basically we basically fund the entire amount even in Canada. So I mean, I would suggest that, in case if I'm not answered all your questions out here, kindly get in touch with us. I mean, I've already stated my coordinates. Please get in touch. I think there are a couple more questions out here, but uh, in the interest of time, I would take this separately. Uh, and Cliff, so Clifton, over to you.
Hey, thanks, Manoj, for the introduction. And well, definitely, as Nathan rightly said, there is a lot of difference when it comes to market, both Indian education market, U.S. education market, and Canadian education market. Um, well, it totally depends upon how you guys look at it. Because as a student, if you travel to Canada, um, your major motive would be to try and get enrolled in the course as soon as possible. If you guys are going through an education counselor, those guys would definitely expedite the process. But if at all you guys are thinking for a September or a January intake for that matter, it is imperative that you guys at least take your admissions 6 months in advance of the course starting, because there are definitely a lot of students across the country who are trying to get to Canada. Um, Addressing a few general questions that we have. How do you make a foreign country feel like home away from home? Um, well, we are fortunate that we've been we have technology with us, and WhatsApp or even Skype for that matter is definitely a way that you can keep your conversations with your parents and friends back home. But in Canada itself, if you're a student, trust me, you guys would never feel away from home, because there are definitely a lot of Indians who are studying here, and all of us are in the same boat. So you would never feel um, the need of, or you never feel that you are away from your country, because you definitely have a lot of people from different parts across the country. In Canada, you'll find people from Kerala, you'll find people from Punjab, you'll find people from Bombay, Delhi, Gujarat. So it's definitely a mixed crowd, and you will see a lot of people. Um, so do not worry about not how you make about making Canada as your country of choice. Um, Second question that I see is how to make the best of being an international student. Exposure is key, and if at all you guys get a lot of exposure with regards to your course curriculum, take it. Any volunteering activities that you guys have been offered, do it. Part-time opportunities to work on campus, do it. Try and talk to a lot of people. As Nathan clearly mentioned, networking plays a very important role for students in, especially if you're an international student in a foreign land. Um, your work is basically what will prove what your worth is. You may have a degree already. You may already have a master's, probably, because when I came to Canada, I already had my master's. So do not come with a big chip on your block. Be humble. Try to get whatever exposure you can. Do not think any course to be, um, say, not in par with what you want it to be. Obviously, the Canadian education system is much different from the Indian education system. Things are more hands-on. Um, you have things more hands-on, and when you say hands-on, it's more to deal with your experience with your projects, your assignments. Um, so just keep your focus, keep your head high, and I think it's not difficult to go through your study time in the country. The next question that I see here is student real-time experience studying abroad. Well, uh, it all depends upon what you make of the opportunity that you've been given to, because there are a lot of people who are waiting in line to come to Canada, and it's definitely a land of opportunity. Um, Wherever you go across the country, let it be Ottawa, let it be Montreal, let it be um, Quebec, let it be Ontario for that matter, all these places will have a lot of jobs for students. Um, you have to search for the job, and if possible search for a job in the field that you want to pursue your education in, because what that does is that gives you a competitive edge over the others, and it's more easier for your employers in future to choose and hire you. Another question that we had during the webinar, which which Manoj was taking forward, was how to manage studying on your own in a very new and unknown country. As I said before, you would not feel alone. Trust me, Canada is a place to so many Indian students and so many students from other nationalities. You would never feel it difficult to study on your own. And if you try and talk to your fellow students, your peers, your students in your course, majority of them are helpful. Um, just try to fit in, try to talk to people, and any questions, your professors is always there to help you out. If in case if you feel that you are feeling a bit out of line with a course, just send them an email and they will definitely help you out. Uh, that's it for me. If you guys do have any other questions, you could please go ahead and ask.
Great, thank you, Clifton. Also, thank you, Manoj. There's some great information you both shared. Appreciate you doing that. For those still in the webinar, if you have any questions for them, please feel free to ask in the question section, and we'll have an opportunity at the end to answer any further questions. I just will be speaking one last bit on just kind of career opportunities based on course stream. And then we'll wrap up the webinar. So while it's important to pick something that you're interested in doing and or that you might be passionate about, it might be more important to think about what the degree that you might pursuing will result in. And what I mean by that is ultimately your goal for studying abroad is likely to find a job after you graduate. So when you're picking your degree in your field, it's really important to think about what does a degree in that particular field look like in terms of job demand, job opportunities, the industry and region that you're in. It's also important to think about how transitive the skills you might learn for that degree might be. So for instance, if you know that a particular degree of engineering is definitely needed in India, you would know that if you weren't able to secure a job and visa in the country you study abroad in, that there would be a lot of good opportunities for you back in India if you were to come home. And as I've mentioned before, as an example, in the US, there's a major STEM shortage. So those that pursue a STEM degree, particularly in engineering or computer science, data science, companies are clamoring to hire those types of students. And just I wanted to make a quick mention. There's a lot of news out there about visas in the US and some potential fears or worries. And I just wanted to help alleviate those worries. The H-1B program is still going strong, and there are no concrete plans to shutter it. In fact, a recent proposal that just came up should actually make it easier for master's degree students that are international students to obtain an H-1B visa in the US. So just do keep in mind that there are no concrete plans to shutter any type of program. Another thing to note is for internships and assistantships, we get questions about this a lot for students who might be applying, particularly in the US, is, how do I get this internship or assistantship? And so they are available, and most schools will have a program for in-school internship or in-school assistantship. The thing to keep in mind is that these are very competitive. I mean, you might want them, and so does every other student that applies. So it is, again, important to apply early. In fact, many universities might have a specific early deadline that if you want an assistantship or internship, you have to apply early. And this allows them to weed out the applicants so that they don't have to choose for every single person that applies. And it's also important for each specific department. It can be a separate process than actually applying to the school. So many departments will require you to reach out directly to them after you have applied to apply for the assistantship or internship. And that would be something that we help our students with that work with us for admissions. And then just particularly for the US, I wanted to just briefly review the OPT program. So usually when a student comes to the US, they come on an F1B visa, which will last for the duration of their study. Then the student will need to obtain the H-1B visa to continue their stay. However, if a student takes advantage of the OPT program, they can stay for up to a year after graduation before needing to be sponsored for that H-1B. Now, the very key additional caveat is those students that studied a STEM degree can add 2 years to that original 1-year OPT program. So they can actually end up staying for 3 years. So we see a lot of students that come to the US, be very keen on making sure their degree is designated as STEM so that they can enjoy that 3-year opportunity with the OPT program. And I just wanted to give some last steps on career guidance as well as just overall admission tips. So one thing to keep in mind is that a reputation of a school in the country that you're studying abroad is not going to be the same as a reputation of that school in India itself. And what I mean by that is, for instance, in the US, people in the US, companies in the US, they have a reputation of a school, and they deem that school to have a certain prestige. Alternatively, in India, that same school will have a reputation by Indian students, Indian companies, etc. Now, what's important to note is the US companies don't really care about the Indian reputation. They're going to focus on what the reputation is in the US. And so the reason I'm saying that is many schools might be considered good in India that in the study abroad country might not be seen as such as well. So we see a lot of students apply to what we like to call popular Indian schools. And this is a school that has a very high percentage of applicants from India. And this can be a bad thing for 2 reasons. One, if there are too many Indian students at the school, it makes it harder to stand out when getting hired. And it can actually also lead to visa denials. So these schools will have a reputation of accepting anyone and everyone. And the consulates know this information. So if they see an admittance to a particular school like this, they may discount it and, in fact, deny it, depending on which consulate you're at, especially in southern India, in Hyderabad. And the reason I mentioned it can be harder to stand out for a job, it also is just harder to find a job. And the reason for this is, particularly in the US, local companies will not sponsor H-1B visa if there is a plethora of students available for OPT. Sponsoring a visa is a really expensive process, So if there are a lot of students that can do OPT training, the companies are just going to continue hiring OPT students and cycle through those students and not sponsor for H-1B. So if there are too many Indian and just at a larger level, just international students that have the same skills, same jobs, same ability to do the OPT, companies in that area or industry or that city will just hire those OPT programs, leading to less opportunity for that H-1B visa. Similarly, as I spoke about scholarships, assistantships, internships, if there are a lot of international students at a school, those particular internships and assistantships will just be that much more competitive due to the quality of similar candidates. And typically they are given to those that stand out. So it can be harder to stand out in that case. So that is what I will leave you at. I want to thank you for your time, but we do have a little bit more time for any last questions that might have come through. I see Mark, did you have a question? Happy to answer if you did. Okay, looks like the question has been answered elsewhere. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you for Manoj and Clifton's great words regarding Auxilo and his study abroad experience. If you'd like more information, you can reach out to us at nomadcredit.com as well as my email, nathan@nomadcredit.com. If you have specific questions on loans, please feel free to reach out to Auxilo. We will be following up with those that attended as well as those that registered, and there will be a recording for this webinar if you would like to view it again that you can have access to. So again, thank you all for your time. Manoj of Clifton, if you had any last words, happy to allow that right now.
No, I think we're good. I mean, as long as these guys don't have any questions, then I think we're good to end the session.
All right. Well, great, guys, and I hope you all have a good evening.
Good evening, guys.